The rain was coming down hard on the cobblestones outside Windsor Castle. It was the kind of cold, heavy rain that made everything look gray and lifeless. Most people had gone inside. The streets were empty. But one man stood perfectly still at his post. His name was James Crowley. He was a royal guard. For 12 years he had stood outside that gate, watching, waiting, protecting. His red uniform was soaked through. Water dripped from the brim of his bearskin hat. But he didn't move. He never moved. That was the job. James had seen thousands of people walk by. Tourists took photos. Children waved. Some tried to make him laugh. He never reacted. He was trained not to. But behind that stone face, James noticed everything. Every sound, every movement, every shadow. That's why he heard it. A sound so small, most people would have missed it. A tiny cry, weak, desperate. It came from somewhere near the gate. James's eyes shifted slightly. He couldn't turn his head, not yet, but he listened. There it was again. Softer this time, almost drowned out by the rain. His heart began to beat faster. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Years of training had taught him to trust his instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming at him to look. Then he saw it. A tiny orange ball of fur, no bigger than his fist. A kitten. It was crawling out from under a bush near the palace wall. Its fur was soaked. Its little body was shaking. It could barely walk. James felt something twist in his chest. He wanted to move. He wanted to help. But he couldn't. It's not while on duty. The rules were clear. A royal guard does not break formation. Not for anything. The kitten took another step forward. It wobbled. Its legs gave out. It collapsed onto the wet stone. James clenched his jaw. His hands tightened around his rifle. He stared straight ahead, but his eyes were locked on that tiny creature. Then he heard something else. Something that made his blood run cold. The low rumble of an engine. A car was coming. Fast. If you're watching this, stay with us. This story gets even more intense. And if you love emotional true stories like this, hit that subscribe button now. You won't regret it. The car was getting closer. James could see the headlights cutting through the rain. It was moving fast. Too fast. And the kitten was right in its path. James's mind raced. He had seconds, maybe less. If he moved, he could be disciplined. Stripped of his rank, maybe even dismissed. 12 years of perfect service, gone. But if he didn't move, that kitten would die. The headlights grew brighter. The engine roared. The kitten tried to stand again, but it was too weak. It just sat there, shivering, completely unaware of the danger speeding toward it. James made his decision. He broke formation. He stepped forward, and in that moment, he stopped being just a guard. He became something more. But the car was already there, and there was no time left. James lunged forward. His boots hit the wet pavement hard. He threw his rifle to the side. It clattered against the stone. His hands reached out. His fingers stretched toward that tiny orange kitten. The car's brakes screamed. Tires skidded on the slick road. The sound was deafening. James could feel the heat from the headlights. The car was so close he could see the royal crest on the hood. His hand closed around the kitten. He pulled it against his chest and rolled to the side. The car swerved. It missed him by inches. He could feel the wind from it as it passed. His heart was hammering so hard it hurt. The car stopped 20 feet away. The engine idled. Rain pounded on the roof. For a moment, everything was silent, except for the sound of water hitting metal. James lay on the ground, gasping for breath. His uniform was covered in mud. His hat had fallen off. But in his hands, pressed against his chest, the kitten was alive. He could feel its tiny heartbeat. Fast. Frightened, but alive. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. She was older, elegant, wearing a cream-colored coat. Her face was pale with shock. Security officers rushed toward her, but she waved them away. She walked straight to James. He recognized her immediately. Everyone in Britain would. It was Queen Camilla. James tried to stand. He was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from relief, from the weight of what he had just done. He had broken protocol. He had abandoned his post, and he had done it right in front of royalty. "Are you hurt?" Camilla asked. Her voice was steady, but James could hear the concern in it. Ma'am," James said quietly. He was still holding the kitten. He didn't know what else to do. Camilla looked down at the small creature in his hands. Her expression softened. "May I see?" James carefully opened his hands. The kitten looked up at them with wide, frightened eyes. It was so small, so fragile. Its orange fur was matted and dirty. One of its ears was torn. It had been out there for a long time. "Oh, you poor little thing," Camilla whispered. She reached out and gently touched the kitten's head with one finger. It flinched at first, then leaned into her touch. Other guards had arrived now. James's commanding officer was there too. His face was hard, unreadable. James knew what was coming. He had broken the rules. There would be consequences. But before anyone could speak, Camilla stood up straight. She looked at the commanding officer. "This man," she said firmly, "just saved a life. He acted without hesitation, without thought for himself. That is the mark of true courage." The officer stiffened. "Ma'am, with respect, he abandoned his post." "He did what was right," Camilla interrupted. Her voice was calm, but left no room for argument. "And I will not see him punished for it." James felt something break inside him. Not sadness. Relief. He had been prepared to lose everything. But instead he was being defended. By the Queen Consort herself. Camilla turned back to James. "James Crowley, ma'am." "Well, James Crowley, I think you've earned a break from standing in the rain. Come with me. Let's get this little one warm and safe." She started walking back toward the car. Then she paused and looked over her shoulder. "That's an order." James glanced at his commanding officer. The man gave him a single nod. Permission. He followed her to the car. But as they walked, James couldn't shake one thought. How did this kitten end up here? Where did it come from? And why did it feel like this moment was about to change everything? Inside the palace, everything felt different. James had guarded these walls for 12 years, but he had never been inside. Not like this. The hallways were warm and golden. Paintings lined the walls. The ceiling seemed impossibly high. He felt out of place. His boots left wet marks on the polished floor. His uniform was ruined. And he was still holding a muddy kitten. Camilla led him to a small sitting room. A fire was already burning in the fireplace. She gestured to a chair near the warmth. "Sit," she said. "You're soaking wet." James hesitated. "Ma'am, I'll ruin the furniture. It's furniture. It can be cleaned." She smiled gently. "Please, sit." He sat down carefully, still cradling the kitten. The little creature had stopped shaking. It was purring now, a tiny, rumbling sound. James had never heard anything so fragile and yet so full of life. A palace staff member appeared with towels and a small bowl of water. Camilla took one towel and began gently drying the kitten herself. James watched in quiet amazement. Here was someone who lived surrounded by luxury and power, and she was kneeling on the floor, caring for a stray animal. "I was a girl," Camilla said softly. "Not looking up from the kitten, I found a bird with a broken wing. I brought it home. My mother said it wouldn't survive, but I didn't listen. I fed it with a dropper, kept it warm. And after 3 weeks, it flew away." She looked up at James. "Do you know what I learned?" James shook his head. "That the smallest acts of kindness matter the most, because the world tells us to look away, to stay in our place, to not get involved." She smiled. "But people like you don't listen to that voice. You listen to something deeper." James felt emotion rising in his chest. He swallowed hard. "I just couldn't let it die, ma'am." "I know," she said. "And that says more about your character than 12 years of standing at attention ever could." The kitten mewed softly. It was looking around now, more alert. Its big eyes took in the room. The firelight reflected in them. We should get it checked by a vet, Camilla said. She stood and spoke to someone James couldn't see. Within minutes, arrangements were made. A royal veterinarian was on the way. While they waited, Camilla asked James about his life. Where he was from, how long he had served, if he had family. James answered each question simply, still not quite believing this was happening. Do you have anyone at home? Camilla asked. James paused. No, ma'am. I live alone. Always have. Camilla looked at him thoughtfully. That must be lonely sometimes. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was in his silence. The veterinarian arrived 20 minutes later. She was young, efficient, kind. She examined the kitten carefully while James and Camilla watched. After a few minutes, she looked up. It's malnourished and dehydrated, she said. Probably been on the streets for several days. But nothing's broken. No infections. With proper care, it should recover fully. Relief washed over James. He hadn't realized how tense he had been. It'll need somewhere to stay, the vet continued. Warmth, regular feeding, attention, at least for a few weeks. Camilla turned to James. Would you be willing to take care of it? James blinked. Me. You saved its life. I think it would want to stay with you. If you're willing. James looked down at the kitten. It was curled up in his hands now, comfortable, safe. It looked up at him with complete trust. He thought about his small apartment, about coming home to silence every night, about eating dinner alone, about weekends with nothing to fill them. Yes, he said quietly. I'll take care of it. Camilla smiled. Good, then it's settled. She paused. But there's something else. Something I'd like to ask you. James looked up at her. There was something different in her expression now. Something serious. I want you to tell this story, she said. Publicly. I want people to know what you did. And why. James felt his stomach tighten. Ma'am, I'm not comfortable with attention, I know, Camilla said gently. But sometimes the world needs to see that courage isn't about glory. It's about doing what's right when no one's watching. Even when it costs you something. James didn't know what to say. But before he could respond, something happened that changed everything. A palisade rushed into the room. His face was flushed. He was holding a phone. Ma'am, he said breathlessly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a development. Camilla frowned. What is it? Someone filmed the incident. A tourist. It's already online. It's spreading very quickly. James felt his heart sink. He hadn't thought about that. Of course, someone had filmed it. Someone always did. Camilla took the phone. She watched the screen in silence. James could hear the audio faintly. The screech of brakes. Voices shouting. Then quieter sounds. People crying. Someone saying, "Oh my God, he could have died." When the video ended, Camilla handed the phone back. She looked at James. How do you feel about the world knowing your name? James's throat was dry. I didn't do it for recognition. I know you didn't, but that doesn't mean it won't come. She sat down across from him. James, within hours, millions of people will see what you did. They'll want to know who you are. The media will find you. They always do. James felt trapped. This was exactly what he had never wanted. He had spent his entire career being invisible. Just another guard in a red uniform, anonymous. Safe. Can't stop it, Camilla continued. But I can help you control it, if you're willing to work with me. James looked down at the kitten. It had fallen asleep in his hands. Its breathing was slow and steady, peaceful. What did you have in mind? He asked quietly. Camilla leaned forward. We release our own statement. We tell the story properly. We explain what happened. And we use it to remind people that compassion matters. That every life has value, even the smallest ones. James thought about it. He didn't want fame. He didn't want attention. But maybe Camilla was right. Maybe there was a reason this had happened. Maybe it wasn't just about saving one kitten. Maybe it was about something bigger, right? He said finally. I'll do it, Camilla nodded. Thank you. I promise you won't regret this. But James wasn't sure. Because deep down, he had a feeling this was only the beginning. The statement was released the next morning. It was simple, honest. It explained what James had done and why. It included a photo of him holding the kitten, both of them looking at the camera. His face was serious, but his eyes were soft, kind. The response was immediate. Within hours, the story was everywhere. News channels, social media, radio shows. Everyone was talking about the royal guard who broke protocol to save a kitten. James's phone wouldn't stop ringing. He had to turn it off. Reporters showed up at his apartment building. His commanding officer had to assign extra security to keep them away. But it wasn't the media attention that surprised James. It was everything else. The letters started arriving, hundreds of them, then thousands. People from all over the world writing to thank him, to share their own stories, to tell him he had inspired them. One letter came from a woman in Australia. She wrote that she had been planning to end her life that night. But she saw the video. She saw James risk everything for something so small, and it reminded her that kindness still existed, that the world still had good people in it. She decided to keep living. James read that letter 3 times. His hands were shaking. He had saved more than a kitten. He had saved a person he would never meet, and he hadn't even known it. More stories came. A teacher in Japan started a program teaching children about compassion. Inspired by James, a veteran in America dealing with depression, adopted a rescue dog and credited James's story with giving him hope. A teenage girl in Brazil stood up to bullies at her school because James showed her what courage looked like. James couldn't process it all. It was too much. It's too big. He was just one person. He had just done what felt right. But Camilla called him one evening, 3 weeks after the incident. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Understand what, ma'am?" "Why this matters. You didn't just save a kitten, James. You reminded people that we're supposed to care for each other, that we're supposed to protect the vulnerable, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs us something." James looked down at the kitten. He had named it Charlie. It was healthy now, playful. It chased strings and climbed his furniture and purred whenever he came home. "I never thought one moment could change so much," James said quietly. "The best moments never do," Camilla replied. "They just happen. And we have to choose whether to step forward or stay in place." James hung up the phone. He sat there in his small apartment, Charlie curled up in his lap, and let himself cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization that his life had meaning he never knew it had. But the story wasn't over, because 3 days later, James received a phone call that would change everything again. The voice on the phone was unfamiliar, professional, polite. "Is this James Crowley?" "Yes," James answered cautiously. "My name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I run an animal rescue organization here in London. I've been trying to reach you for days." James sat up straighter. Charlie jumped off his lap, annoyed at the sudden movement. "What can I do for you?" James asked. There was a pause. "Mr. Crowley, after your story went public, we started receiving reports. Lots of them. People finding stray animals. People wanting to help. Donations pouring in. Our phones haven't stopped ringing." James didn't understand. "That's good, isn't it?" "It's overwhelming," Dr. Mitchell said, but there was warmth in her voice. "We're a small organization. We don't have the resources for this kind of response. But we can't turn animals away. Not now. Not when people are finally paying attention. I still don't understand what this has to do with me." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mr. Crowley, you started something. Whether you're meant to or not, people want to help because they saw you help. They trust you. They believe in you." James felt something heavy settle in his chest. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking if you'd consider working with us. Being a voice for these animals. Helping us raise awareness. You don't have to run anything. You don't have to quit your job, just be part of this. Show people that caring isn't weakness. It's strength." James closed his eyes. This was too much. He was a guard. He stood at a gate. He followed orders. He wasn't a spokesperson. He wasn't a leader. I don't know if I'm the right person, he said quietly. You are, Dr. Mitchell said firmly. Because you didn't do it for attention? You did it because it was right. That's exactly who we need. James didn't answer right away. He looked around his apartment. At Charlie sleeping on the couch. At the letters stacked on his kitchen table. At the life he had built in silence and solitude. Maybe it was time for that to change. Let me think about it, he said. Of course. Take all the time you need. But James didn't need much time. Because 2 days later, something happened that made the decision for him. He was back at his post. Standing guard. It was a clear day. Tourists were everywhere, taking photos, asking questions. James stood, silent and still, just like always. Then a little girl approached. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She had curly brown hair and was wearing a bright yellow coat. Her mother was with her, holding her hand. The girl walked right up to James. She looked up at him with wide, serious eyes. Are you the man who saved the kitten? She asked. James's throat tightened. He couldn't respond. He was on duty. But the girl didn't seem to mind. My mummy says you're a hero, the girl continued. She says you showed everyone that being kind is important, even when it's scary. Her mother smiled apologetically at James, then gently pulled her daughter back. But before they walked away, the little girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stuffed cat. Orange, just like Charlie. She set it down at James's feet. This is for you, she said. So you remember that people like you. Then she walked away, holding her mother's hand. James stared down at the stuffed cat. His vision blurred. He blinked hard. He couldn't cry. Not here. Not now. But something inside him broke open. That night, he called Dr. Mitchell. I'll do it, he said. Whatever you need. I'm in. He could hear the smile in her voice. Thank you, James. You won't regret this. And he didn't. The partnership started small. James visited schools. He talked to children about compassion, about responsibility, about how small actions could create big changes. He helped the rescue organization with fundraising. His name brought attention. People donated. Volunteers signed up. More animals were saved. More lives were changed. But the most important part wasn't the numbers. It was the connections. James met people who had been inspired by his story, people who had adopted animals, people who had started volunteering, people who had simply chosen to be kinder because they saw that kindness mattered. One evening, Camilla invited James back to the palace. It had been 3 months since the incident. He brought Charlie with him. The kitten was bigger now, healthy and energetic. They sat in the same room where they had first talked. The fire was burning again. Everything felt familiar and yet completely different. You've done something remarkable, Camilla said. Watching Charlie play with a ribbon on the floor. I just followed through, James replied. No, Camilla corrected gently. You led. There's a difference. Following through is doing what's expected. Leading is doing what's necessary, even when no one asks you to. James didn't know what to say. He still didn't think of himself as a leader. He was just a man who couldn't walk past suffering. I have something for you, Camilla said. She handed him a small box. Inside was a medal. Simple, silver, engraved with the words, for compassion and courage. It's not official, Camilla said. It won't appear in any records, but I wanted you to have it. As a reminder of what you started and what you continue to do. James held the medal carefully. It was the most meaningful thing anyone had ever given him, but what came next was even more powerful. 6 months after that rainy day, James received a letter that looked different from all the others. The envelope was plain. The handwriting was shaky. No return address. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, written in pencil. Dear James, you don't know me, but I need to tell you something. I'm 12 years old. Last year, my dad left. My mom works 2 jobs. We don't have much. I felt angry all the time, like nothing mattered. Then I saw your video. I watched it probably 50 times. I couldn't understand why you did it. You could have been hurt. You could have lost your job. But you saved that kitten anyway. My teacher said it's because you saw something that needed help, and you decided that mattered more than being safe. So I tried it. There's a kid at my school everyone picks on. Last week, I sat with him at lunch. Just me and him. Nobody else. Now other kids are sitting with us too. He smiled yesterday. I never saw him smile before. I wanted you to know that you made me brave enough to be kind. Thank you. From Alex. James read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. He carried it with him for weeks. Whenever he doubted what he was doing, whenever the attention felt like too much, he would touch that letter and remember why it mattered. The rescue organization grew. They opened a second location, then a third. James became the face of their campaigns. Not because he wanted to be, but because people trusted him. They saw authenticity in him. They saw someone who genuinely cared. He still worked as a royal guard. He still stood at that gate. But now, when children walked by and recognized him, he would give them the tiniest nod. Just a small acknowledgement. A reminder that he saw them too. Charlie became something of a celebrity himself. The organization used him in their materials. The kitten who started a movement, they called him. Charlie didn't care about any of that. He just wanted to play and eat and sleep in James's lap. 1 year after the incident, the organization held a fundraising gala. James didn't want to go. He hated formal events, hated being the center of attention. But Dr. Mitchell convinced him. You don't have to give a speech, she promised. Just show up. Let people see you. That's all. So James went. He wore his formal uniform. He brought Charlie in a carrier, and he tried to stay invisible in a room full of people who wanted to meet him. But halfway through the evening, Dr. Mitchell took the stage. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about the work they had done, the animals they had saved, the lives they had changed. Then she said something James wasn't expecting. None of this would exist without one person. A man who made a choice in the rain, a man who decided that one small life mattered enough to risk everything for. The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at James. But what's remarkable, Dr. Mitchell continued, isn't just what he did, it's what he inspired. Because of James, we've rescued over 2,000 animals this year. Because of James, we have 300 active volunteers. Because of James, donations have increased by 800%. She paused. But numbers don't tell the whole story. The real story is in the letters. The thousands of messages from people who say James gave them permission to care, who say his courage made them braver, who say his compassion reminded them what being human is supposed to mean. James felt his face burning. He wanted to disappear. But Dr. Mitchell wasn't finished. James Crowley, would you please come up here? He didn't want to. Every instinct told him to stay where he was. But he thought about that little girl in the yellow coat, about Alex's letter, about the woman in Australia who chose to keep living. He walked to the stage. The room erupted in applause. It went on and on. People were standing. Some were crying. James stood there, overwhelmed, not knowing what to do. Dr. Mitchell handed him the microphone. Say something, she whispered. James looked out at the crowd, at all these people who cared, who wanted to help, who believed that kindness mattered. He thought about what to say. Something inspiring, something memorable. But when he opened his mouth, only the truth came out. Not special, he said quietly. I just couldn't walk away. The room was silent. I think most people want to help, James continued. They want to do good. They just don't know how. Or they're afraid. Or they think someone else will do it. He paused. But that day, in the rain, there was no one else. It was just me. And that kitten. And a choice? His voice grew stronger. We all get moments like that. Moments where we have to decide who we are, not who we want to be, who we actually are. And I decided I wanted to be someone who cares, even when it's hard, even when it costs something, because that's what makes us human. He looked down at Charlie in the front row, sleeping peacefully in his carrier. That little guy taught me something, James said. He taught me that no life is too small to matter. No act of kindness is wasted. And no moment of courage is meaningless. He looked back at the crowd. So if you take anything from this, take that. You don't have to save the world. You just have to care about the piece of it right in front of you. That's enough. That's everything. The room exploded with applause again, but James barely heard it. Because he finally understood something. He had spent 12 years trying to be invisible, trying to disappear into duty and routine. But that day in the rain, he became visible, not just to the world. To himself, that night, James went home to his small apartment. Charlie curled up on his lap. The letters sat on his table. The medal from Camilla hung on his wall. His phone buzzed with messages from people he had never met, thanking him for things he didn't quite understand, and James realized something profound. He had saved a kitten. But in doing so, he had saved himself. He had found purpose, connection, meaning, all because he decided that one small life was worth the risk. Outside, rain began to fall again. Soft this time. Gentle. James listened to it hitting the window. And for the first time in his life, he felt completely at peace. Because he knew now that the world doesn't change all at once. It changes one moment at a time. One choice at a time. One act of courage at a time. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to step forward when everyone else steps back. That person could be anyone. It could even be you.